Oregon Labor Commissioner Val Hoyle is looking to leave Salem and head to Washington, D.C. She is the Democrat looking to defeat Republican Alex Skarlatos in Oregon's 4th Congressional District. Democrats outnumber Republicans by more than 40,000 in the 4th District, which includes Oregon's southern coastal counties. Eugene, Corvallis, and Coos Bay are among the cities represented. A resident of Springfield, Val Hoyle returns to Eye on Northwest Politics. Thanks for being here.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. During your tenure as Oregon Labor Commissioner, Oregon's minimum wage was raised to $13.50 an hour. Would you support raising it even more? And what about the minimum wage on the national level?
So I feel very strongly that we should raise the minimum wage at the national level. It's $7.35 and it's been that way for a very long time. I was one of the people that helped pass the raise in the minimum wage when I was in the legislature, negotiating the 3-tier program that took into account the geography that someone is working in. But I do think that the minimum wage has not kept up with cost of living and inflation, and absolutely we should raise the minimum wage at the federal level and let the rest of the country catch up to Oregon.
What about business people who say that raising the minimum wage is a big hit on the economy?
There's no evidence of that. I mean, there's just no evidence of that. What we've seen is with the raise in the minimum wage, we still, our job market is still incredibly strong and we are successful. So if you have people that can't afford to live, they're not going to be able to come to work. So, but the evidence does not show that raising the minimum wage has a negative effect on the economy.
We're dealing with record high inflation right now. What would be your suggestion in Congress regarding the economy and stemming inflation?
So I think the first thing, and Oregon can be a really major part of solving this problem, is addressing the supply chain issues. We saw this throughout the pandemic, and there is a proposal that Peter DeFazio has worked very, very hard on to have a port in Coos Bay. It's a container port that would go straight to rail, and that would decrease our supply chain congestion on the West Coast by 10 to 12%. That is not a small thing. We need to bring manufacturing back to the United States and to Oregon specifically. And that Coos Bay project would create 9,000 permanent jobs in Lane, Douglas, and Coos County. And that could help us restore the middle class that we once had when we had a lot of the timber jobs. So I think it's supply chain, also job training. I've worked very hard on expanding apprenticeship as labor commissioner, and we have lots of apprenticeship programs, not just in the building and construction trades, but in healthcare and manufacturing. So every employer I talk to says that they're having trouble finding qualified workers. And with our apprenticeship programs, which I would love to take our system nationally, we can connect workers who want a good job with the jobs that are available without a mountain of college debt.
What did you think of President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act?
I think it was a really important step forward and shows that Democrats in Congress actually want to do something about addressing the issue. I think what we see a lot is, with the GOP, they keep pointing out what the problems are, but they don't want to be part of the solution. The Inflation Reduction Act capped insulin at $35 for everyone, and there was not one Republican that supported it. So I think it just shows that Democrats are willing to come forward and bring solutions.
Our biggest issue in Oregon right now, homelessness and housing affordability. I'm sure you're seeing the evidence of that in Lane County. What do you propose?
So I believe that the federal government has walked away from its responsibility on housing. Housing down here is a little different than in the metro area. We have less than 1% vacancy rates in many parts of the district, specifically on the coast. So we need to, number one, work with communities to build new housing stock, make sure, there are places on the coast that can't hire employees because there isn't enough housing. So it's not just low income housing, but also middle income housing. We need to ensure that we have the supportive services so that people who have addictions or mental illness or disabilities are able to stay in their home. And so whether it's fair housing or working with each community, because the solutions in a rural community are different than the solutions in an urban community. So the federal government needs to work with each community to invest in projects to expand housing stock and make sure that people can stay housed.
Crime also a big issue in the 4th District and nationwide. Much has been made of the impact of Measure 110, which decriminalized most street drugs in favor of treatment programs in Oregon. A lot of people would say it hasn't worked so well so far. How would you deal with drug addiction, especially opioids, and the crime that comes along with it?
So I feel very, very strongly we need to have places where people can go to get treatment. That's number one. And number two, down here again, our public safety issues look different than in the metro area, because in our rural communities, we have sheriffs. For instance, here in Lane County, in the 1970s, we had 100 deputy sheriffs that could be on call, on patrol. We now have 30. And there's a much larger population. We have to invest in our public safety services so that when someone calls 911, the right person shows up, whether that's, right first responder, whether it's fire or police, or, we have the Cahoots program that started here in Eugene that is now a national model. So you can have people come that aren't law enforcement to help people who are having a mental illness crisis. I've always supported law enforcement. It is why I've earned the support of the Oregon Coalition of Police and Sheriffs. And I will continue to ensure that we invest in the programs to get the right person to the right place when someone calls 911.
So you're not in favor of defunding the police?
No, sir.
What's your take on climate change? You've made battling climate change a priority. Why? And if you can keep your answer relatively brief, that would be great.
Okay, well, yeah. So down here, we have fires, we see droughts, we have extreme weather, and it is right in our face. We cannot continue to kick the can down the road. So I think every bill should be a climate change bill. We should move as quickly as possible away from fossil fuels, and I will work incredibly hard to do that, because we live in a beautiful state, and I want to make sure that we can continue to live here and have a good quality of life.
When you were in the Oregon legislature, you advocated for automatic voter registration, which we now have. Going into the midterms, how concerned are you about election integrity, not only for your race, but for races across the country?
So there has been a lot of misinformation. There is no evidence that there was large-scale voter fraud anywhere. And here in Oregon, the New York Times has said we have the best access to the ballot of any state in the country. So with automatic voter registration, with vote by mail, you have a paper copy of every single vote. I think that we have the best program right here in Oregon, where you can sit and look at your voter pamphlet statement, look at every single candidate and what they have to say. I think the rest of the country is out of step with Oregon, and I will fight to make sure that Oregon's voter programs can get passed at the federal level.
As labor commissioner, you're overseeing workplace issues, including discrimination complaints and the like. How will that experience serve you on the national level should you win?
So one of the reasons that I believe that I'm the most qualified person is that I've worked in the private sector, I've worked in government, and I've in a legislative body, so I know how to pass laws and work with people on both sides of the aisle. And I've run an agency, and running an agency is completely different, but I have that experience. So when I go to Washington, I can work to ask the right questions to make sure that our federal government and those agencies are responding to people in the way that they should. And also, people expect their government to work, and I'm excited to go to Washington and make sure that happens.
Congressional candidate and Oregon Labor Commissioner Val Hoyle, thank you for joining me on Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thank you.